You've seen it happen. Someone close to you goes through something painful, and instead of calling someone, instead of reaching out, they simply disappear. No explanation, no warning, just silence. They were there yesterday, laughing, talking, present, and then something happened. Something shifted inside them, and suddenly, they are gone. Messages unanswered. They don't block you. They don't say anything cruel. They just vanish, like a light that slowly dims until the room goes completely dark. And you're left standing there, wondering what you did wrong. You check your phone, one message sent, then another, then five. Each one delivered, each one read, and each one met with the same response, nothing. Just a screen that stares back at you in silence. From the outside, this behavior looks cold. It looks calculated. It can feel like rejection, like the person has simply decided you are no longer worth their time or their energy. Here's what I want you to understand today. What looks like coldness from the outside is something entirely different on the inside. And once you understand what is actually happening, everything changes. This behavior is a coping mechanism, not a character flaw, not a manipulation tactic, a coping mechanism built over time, layer by layer, as a way of surviving emotional pain that felt too big to carry in public. When emotional pain crosses a certain threshold, the brain does something remarkable. It doesn't collapse, it doesn't explode, it switches modes. Like a circuit breaker tripping before the wires can catch fire. The brain sends one clear signal: retreat. Pull back from everything. Reduce all incoming stimulation. Find somewhere quiet. Find somewhere safe. For people who disappear when they are hurting, solitude is not loneliness. It is safety. It is the one environment where the noise stops, where the performance stops. Most people move toward others when they are in pain. They call someone. They need to feel that somebody is there. But there is another group. People for whom reaching out in those moments feels like adding weight to an already breaking bridge. This is not because they don't value the people in their life. They do, often deeply. Often more than they ever say out loud. The problem is what they have learned. Somewhere along the way, they learned that showing pain comes at a cost, that vulnerability is a gamble, and that the odds have not historically been in their favor. In psychology, there is a concept called the window of tolerance. It describes the zone in which a person can feel emotions, process them, and still function, without becoming overwhelmed. For some people, that window is wide. They can handle intense emotions and return to baseline fairly quickly. For others, the window is narrow. Their nervous system reaches its limit faster. When the emotion becomes too large, too raw, too visible to contain, these people do not move toward the people around them. And I want to be absolutely clear about something. This is not weakness. Retreating when overwhelmed is not a failure of character. It is a survival response. People who disappear when they are hurting have very often learned that expressing vulnerability was not safe, that opening up led not to comfort, but to being dismissed, minimized, or made to feel like a burden. They reached out once, maybe more than once, and what came back was not what they needed. Someone looked away. Someone changed the subject. Someone said, just get over it. So they made a decision, not consciously, but deeply, that the most reliable support was the support they gave themselves. That handling everything alone was safer. Here's something that surprises people when they first hear it. People who disappear when they are hurting are not emotionally numb. They are not cold. They feel deeply. What they have developed is an internal system, sophisticated, private, and largely invisible to the outside world, for managing those feelings alone. On the surface, they appear composed, self-sufficient, like the kind of person who simply handles things without making a fuss. They are often extraordinarily capable and quietly reliable. But beneath that surface, there is often a very different reality. Think of an iceberg. What the world sees is calm and controlled. What exists below the waterline is vast and almost entirely unseen. They are exhausted. Not from the work, from the performance. They have been disappointed enough times that they stopped writing the letter, stopped picking up the phone, stopped forming the words. Because asking stopped feeling worth the risk of the answer. And so, when the pain comes, they retreat. They close the door quietly behind them. They sit with it alone in the dark. Not dramatically, not to punish anyone. They don't disappear because they don't need people. They disappear because they have stopped expecting people to show up in the way they actually need. That distinction is everything. Disappearing when you are hurting is not the same as not caring about your relationships. These are often the people who care the most, who give the most. They remember the small details. They check in without being asked. They show up quietly and consistently for the people they love. Giving comes naturally to them. But when something is offered back to them, when someone tries to give care, comfort, support, something freezes. The hands that so easily reach out for others suddenly cannot reach back. They are completely comfortable being needed. They are deeply, profoundly uncomfortable needing. This imbalance sits at the very center of this pattern. The disappearing act solves something specific. It allows them to feel the pain, fully, privately, without having to ask for anything, without having to be vulnerable. For many of these people, the withdrawal is not just emotional. It is physical. It is sensory. They need quiet. They need stillness. Other people's voices, even voices filled with genuine concern, because being around others when they are in pain requires performing okayness, performing recovery. And when you are already running on empty, that performance costs more than they have left to spend. Solitude is the one place the performance stops, where they can take off every layer and simply exist in whatever state they are actually in. Not the state they are supposed to be in, not the state anyone expects. And for many people with this pattern, solitude is not just where they rest. It is where they slowly, quietly begin to heal, piece by piece, in their own time, on their own terms, with no audience watching. Now, I want to speak directly to those of you who love someone who disappears. If they have gone quiet, their silence is not a statement about you. It is not a verdict on your relationship or your worth to them. Their withdrawal is not a judgment. The connection is still there. The care is still there. What is missing is not the relationship. What is missing is the capacity, in this moment, to be present inside it. That is different. The worst thing you can do is respond to their silence with escalating pressure. More messages, more urgency, ultimatums, hurt expressed in ways that add to the weight they are already carrying. That will not bring them back faster. In fact, it will do the opposite. Every increase in external pressure pushes someone with this pattern further inward. The door doesn't open under force. Under force, it locks, and the person behind it retreats further from it. The most powerful thing you can do is offer a door without forcing anyone through it. Leave something on the other side. A message, a gesture, something that says, I see you, I am here, and I am not going anywhere. Something as simple as this: I am here when you are ready. No pressure, no deadline, no performance required. Those 8 words, delivered without agenda, can reach someone in withdrawal when nothing else can get through. Because unconditional presence, presence without demand, without urgency, without an expiration date, is often the only frequency that someone in full withdrawal can actually receive. Everything else gets filtered out as more noise to manage. And now, if you are the person who disappears, I want to speak to you directly. What you do makes sense. Given everything you have experienced, given what you learned about vulnerability and safety, this pattern makes complete sense. You do not need to be fixed. You do not need to be ashamed of the fact that solitude is your sanctuary. There is nothing broken about needing quiet to recover. There is nothing wrong with processing things privately. Nothing. But I want to offer something to sit with. There is a difference between choosing solitude because it genuinely restores you, and retreating into silence because you are afraid of what happens if someone actually sees you hurting. One is self-awareness, a conscious choice made from a place of knowing what you need. The other is self-protection, dressed up in the language of independence, but driven, underneath, by fear of being seen and found disappointing. The goal is not to throw the door open completely. Nobody is asking for that. The goal is simply to leave a crack, a small opening, just enough to let a little light pass through in both directions. To let one person in, one trusted person. Not to fix anything, not to explain everything, just to let them sit nearby while you go through it. That small act is not weakness. It is a form of extraordinary courage. And in doing that, even once, you give yourself the chance to discover something that may completely rewrite what you believe is possible. That being seen in pain does not have to end in disappointment. That it is survivable. Because here is the honest truth. Healing in complete isolation has a ceiling. There is a point beyond which the solitary work cannot take you further. At that point, something else is needed. Something only another person can provide. The nervous system, your nervous system, needs to experience safety in the presence of another person. Not safety in theory, not safety imagined alone in a quiet room. Safety felt, in real time, with someone actually there. Research published in Psychological Science found that genuine social support, the non-intrusive, non-demanding kind, measurably reduces the brain's threat response. Not advice, not solutions, just presence. It changes the neurology in real, measurable ways. Because the brain, even the most defended brain, even the most avoidant brain, is wired for connection. That wiring does not disappear because life made connection feel dangerous. It waits, quietly, underneath all the armor. And that is perhaps the most important thing I can say today. The brain does not stop needing connection simply because it has learned to fear it. The need and the fear exist at the same time. Both are real. So if someone in your life has gone quiet, do not assume they have forgotten you. The people who disappear when they are hurting are very often the ones holding on to you most tightly, just doing it invisibly, in the dark. And if you are that person, you are allowed to let someone in, not because you owe it to anyone, but because you deserve to not carry everything alone. Because the weight was never meant to be held by one person. The strongest thing you can do is not disappearing perfectly. The strongest thing you can do is letting someone sit with you in the dark and finding out, finally, that the world does not end when you stop holding it alone. If this reached something in you, subscribe. There's a lot more where that came from. And trust me, you'll want to be here for it.